Welcome, everyone, to the Longevity Lab. I'm your host, Juliet.
And I'm Mackie.
And today we have Megan Lyons. Megan is a Harvard graduate, MBA, and former management consultant who left the business world to follow her passion for wellness by opening the Lyons Share Wellness in 2014. Since then, she's earned her master's degree in holistic nutrition and became double board certified in holistic nutrition and clinical nutrition. She has amassed over 10,000 hours of international one-on-one coaching with nutrition clients. She's the author of Start Here, 7 Easy Diet-Free Steps to Achieve Your Ultimate Health and Happiness, a top 10 Amazon bestseller in nutrition, and she runs a podcast on health and wellness called Wellness Your Way with Megan Lyons. We're so excited to have you on the show. Welcome.
I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I want to jump right in with you with all the knowledge that you have accrued with nutritional science. What are you most passionate about when it comes to helping people with their health in this space?
I am multi-passionate, so I could probably just take this one question and talk for the next 3 hours. But if I try to answer that question, I think of two major things that I'm passionate about. One, our health, it's pretty clear by every statistic you look at, whether it's incidence of cancer, cardiovascular disease, inflammatory conditions, diabetes, you name it, we have been on a decline for several decades. And that sounds really depressing. I am a positive person by nature, but I think we are coming to an awakening where we're finally realizing we have to do something about it. And there are so many people like you two and myself and many, many others trying to spread the message of real health. I truly do think we're at a turning point right now. So that's really exciting to me to see where this is going to go. I don't believe we'll continue going down. I believe we're going to continue going up. And then if I really take the words of your question and answer it specifically, what's most exciting for me in terms of helping clients with, it's finally finding their answer. I do not believe there is one thing, maybe aside from like drinking water, which we all need to do. I don't believe there's one thing. And that's why we are all yelling at each other and driving each other crazy on social media and all this stuff, because one person feels so strongly about this, it worked well for them, or they saw a study or whatever. The other person screaming the other thing, and they're both right. Mm-hmm. Oftentimes they're not wrong, but it's my job to help people sort through all of that and actually listen to their body and figure out what works for them.
Yeah, I think that that's really challenging because so many of us want to just be given the right answer to things. And we don't want to necessarily have to go through any of the trial and error. And that error really scares people. Yes. I know just from my experience with working with clients, there's a lot of fear when it comes to doing any changes, especially with nutrition, because I think even if it's not a conscious fear, there's something running in the subconscious that is afraid that things could get worse.
I don't want to mess it up.
Yeah, even if things could get a lot better, they don't want to risk the potentiality of a little more weight gain and I think it's a lot of times it is that. It's not usually other things, but it's often this fear of, but what if I try this thing and it makes my weight issue worse or something like that?
Yeah. And I understand that. It is a real fear. And I'll tell clients when I start working with them, I've read a whole lot of nutrition textbooks, but I've never read the textbook in you. And so we might get it wrong. But that's why we're continuously monitoring this stuff. Whether it's, I do little 1 to 10 ratings with my clients to ask how they feel on digestion, sleep, all of this kind of stuff. We're noticing trends. So is it possible that someone might gain 1 pound if we try the quote wrong dietary approach? Yeah, it's possible, but I'll help them realize, well, that's what you've been doing for the past several months or years or something like that. And it's by knocking out those things that don't work for you that we find the answer. If we can knock out like dominoes, various things that don't work, we just get quicker and quicker at finding the things that do work. And people know what they fear, I believe, is, oh my gosh, I'm going to try this. And then poof, I wake up and I'm 20 pounds heavier. That doesn't happen. That's not real life. Our bodies change relatively slowly based on what we think of. So if something doesn't feel good after a week, great, let's change it. There's nothing permanent in this whole health world.
Yeah, and I appreciate you sharing in the beginning that you see this change happening, the landscape of health and nutrition, that you're really thinking positively about this, that we are not going any more downhill. We've hit the bottom if you think about 88% of Americans being metabolically unhealthy. That is a
Yes.
staggering percentage.
It really is. And honestly, when I first saw the number, I didn't believe it. I had to go look up the study for myself because I was like, yeah, right. Someone just made that up on social media or something like that. But it's actually true, unfortunately. The percentage of people who truly have prediabetes or type 2 diabetes is getting nearer and nearer to 60% of the
Wow.
American population, and 80% of those people don't know it. So that's one component of this 88% of metabolic health. Metabolic health, if you look at the study, is defined by a number of other things too, including blood pressure and cholesterol metrics. So when we're talking about the 88%, it's these people have at least one thing that is suboptimal. So maybe their triglycerides are off. Maybe their fasting blood sugar is off. Maybe their blood pressure is high, something like that. But still, these are pretty basic metrics. And to think that only 12% of people have all those metrics in the optimal range, which I will say also, the ranges are not even set truly optimally, but that's probably another story. It's scary. Like you said, we can't get too much lower than this. We've got to go up from here.
Yeah, and the 60% you said of Americans who are pre-diabetic or diabetic, either or.
Yes.
Yeah. And
Mm-hmm.
what's interesting is I did see that if you were to take a group of people on the street and you were to test them, you're seeing that number of people who have no idea that they are on their
Yeah.
way to getting diabetes. For those who have no clue that this could be what's going on with them, do they have symptoms already? Are there little kind of things that they're just like, "Oh, that's normal." People tend to normalize things that maybe aren't so normal with our health. Can you share for the listeners, are there little things that they could be thinking about or looking out for if they're like, "Am I in that category?" I wonder.
Yes, it's a great question. And the problem is that the symptoms are so vast and so overlapping with so many other conditions, and they're normalized, like you said. So, a very common symptom would be like a 3 p.m. energy slump or an energy slump a couple hours after a meal, more pronounced than usual. But unfortunately, most people think that everyone has that, that
Mhm.
that's
Right.
like how human bodies operate, that we get super tired in the afternoon or constant cravings for sugar, caffeine, something like that, suboptimal sleep, or you're finding like you're in bed for, oh my gosh, 9, 10 hours and you still don't feel like you actually slept. You might, depending on how far it's progressed and if it's impacting your thyroid or other kinds of things like that, you might notice hair changes, nail changes, definitely stubborn belly fat could be associated with that. But I think the first is those slumps and those cravings. So people, even if they're like, oh, I probably think that I'm healthy, why not just get checked? It's a pretty easy test to just see where your blood sugar, and I would hopefully add on a hemoglobin A1C, which is a longer term metric than just that fasting blood sugar. And if your practitioner is super generous or detailed, even adding on a fasting insulin, I think is cream of the crop. But why not at least get that checked if you're experiencing some of those symptoms?
What are your thoughts on the continuous glucose monitors that have become ever so popular with people trying to dial in exactly what are the right foods for them and using that as a way to figure out what their personalized diet should be?
Yeah, I have lots of thoughts, to be honest. So, my sister and her husband, my brother in law, are both type 1 diabetic. So, this is some people would call it the quote non lifestyle or genetic version. It's just a different condition where you have an autoimmune condition that renders your pancreas unusable. meaning that they have to inject themselves with insulin every day for the rest of their lives or they'll die. They also get to wear continuous glucose monitors as part of their monitoring. So when I first wore a continuous glucose monitor as someone without type 1 diabetes, some of my family, not my sister, but really my dad, had a problem with it and was like, that's not what you're supposed to do. You're gamifying or you're celebrating something that's a real condition. So first, I'll express empathy that I understand people like me using it to hack or something like that. It could minimize the severity of people with type 1 diabetes. Now, I've talked to a lot of people with type 1 diabetes and they're like, cool, hey, if we can all use these and bring the price down, then that's a win for everyone because this stuff is so expensive for type 1 diabetics. But that's my first thought. The second thought is it's a really cool tool for people to understand in data some things that seem unbelievable. So, for example, grapes tend to be a very high spiker food. Now, grapes are natural, and I'm the very first person to say if it's made from nature, God, the universe, the earth, whatever you want to say, then eat it. And if it's not, then question it. And so I'm not, even after seeing the CGM data, I'm not going to say don't eat grapes. But when I saw the difference in my numbers by eating just a handful of grapes versus just eating a handful of blueberries, it did make me second guess that. And for my other clients who think, oh, well, Megan's just silly, the handful of gummy bears that I have after lunch really doesn't make a difference, seeing that is pretty cool. And then the third and final thought that I'll say about this is it can go too far. So I put it on the very first time. And I'm a nutritionist. I eat a very healthy diet. So I was like, I got this in the bag. It's going to be so good. I don't even know why I'm wearing it. I went in very confident, overly confident. And it wasn't. It wasn't perfect the way I expected it to be. And I found for me that stress was a huge factor in my reading. So that was a lesson. But then I got paranoid about it. I was like, okay, I can literally sit here and eat this whole jar of peanut butter and the line is going to be completely flat, but I can't eat those grapes. And that's a real mind twist that I think is not helpful for a lot of people. Blood sugar is just one factor. I could also eat, I mean, I didn't, but I probably could have gone and eaten like a heavy fast food meal or something with a lot of fat, and it probably wouldn't have spiked as much as sweet potato or something like that. So I think we just need to take this, if you're going to wear it, take it as one factor, use it for a couple weeks, get the information, don't stress about it, and then move on.
Yeah, I agree with you 100% on that. Just seeing the paranoia that it can inflict on people. And it's
Yes.
one data point, like you're saying. And if you're really trying to gamify it in a way and have your blood sugar be completely stable, then you're talking about being more on a ketogenic diet, which we know isn't appropriate for every single person. Like you're saying, some people that might be the panacea and other people that might be really detrimental in the long term for them. So I totally agree and appreciate the nuances on that because I think all of these biohacking trendy things, they can get really exciting at first, but then they can cause a lot more stress than they need
Yeah.
to. And we're
Yes.
already so stressed out in this modern day world with all the shit that we have to deal with trying to, make a living and or have a family or do the things that we all, are supposed to be doing to strive and be well. And wellness has become this so commodified and so stressful in a lot of ways. And this is something I'm noticing with many of our clients is they feel a lot of paranoia, like you were saying, and overwhelm from something that
Yes.
we're trying to get healthy, but then there's this
Yes.
overwhelm that's causing more distress and dis-ease when we're trying to create less stress and more ease. So it's interesting.
I think it's fascinating that you mentioned that when you were more stressed, your numbers were worse. The data was worse. So we're only just making it worse for ourselves.
But stress is also interesting because there is stress, there's good stress, there's bad stress. Sometimes our body doesn't even necessarily register what is happening. Like if we work out, that's creating a positive stress. But on when you're wearing the CGM, it could show some elevation happening, especially post-workout. You might eat a banana, which is those that can be really good to replenish your glycogen, right? But then the thing is going to be like, you're spiking. And then you're like,
Yeah.
oh no, which then
Yes.
causes so much confusion for people, right, Megan? As far as what to eat, when to eat, how to eat, the confusion continues. And this is what I wanted to really talk to you about is how do we have people be less confused about how to take care of themselves and how do we put people well on their way to the 12% of metabolically healthy versus the 88.
Yes, those are some really great thoughts. And I'll echo what you said first about the two different spikes from stress or exercise. The mechanism of action can be helpful for people to understand. So if I'm going to go lift some heavy weights or go for a run or something like that, I'm going to get that glucose spike because my liver is releasing glycogen. You said that glycogen into the bloodstream to give me energy to get through the workout. So that's really great. It's exactly what it's supposed to be. I want to have a spike. Now, I don't want to do like 8 high intensity workouts per day or something like that, but in moderation, I want to have those spikes from exercise. But the highest spike I ever got on the whole, I wore a continuous glucose monitor for quite a time. The highest spike I ever got was in Dallas. We don't get very many freezes, not like you in Boulder, but we were going to have one night. And I told my husband, it's going to be fine. Don't worry. We don't have to drip the faucets. Like it's all fine. I wake up the next morning before he did, and he had a big presentation, whatever, like it was a big day, and our whole entire house was frozen. Everything, like I thought the pipes were going to burst. Everything was not working right. And the situation wasn't going to happen very well with his big day. And I felt really guilty. I was very stressed about that. That was the highest spike. I hadn't eaten a thing that morning. It was just waking up and seeing that. So of
Wow.
course, that in hindsight, I'm like, well, that's not really that stressful. But in the moment, I was super panicked about it. And that raised my glucose really high. So that's not the spike that we want to see all the time. Now, getting back to your second part of your question, which is how do we make this more simple for people? I will say a couple of things. First, if it has come about in the past 12 months, question it very strongly. Doesn't mean that science isn't advancing. I think nutrition is so cool and health is so cool because we're constantly learning more about the body. So I'm not saying we can't learn new stuff, but fads come and go. Sometimes based on new science, sometimes based on like the Kardashians or an Instagram reel that went viral or whatever, based on not real information. And so if it's new, I would just question it, sit with yourself. For example, really big trends that we've seen like super low carb or keto. You said yourself, that doesn't work for everyone. I completely agree. It doesn't work for me. If we look at any kind of intense exercise swings, maybe it's like marathons or maybe it's like CrossFit or whatever, probably doesn't work for everyone. Anything that's trending, I just want people to question. And then second, go back to the good old fashioned, like logging how you feel, which sounds so boring to people. I get it. But whatever their issue is, if their issue is digestion or bloating or energy or sleep or mood or whatever, I'll just have them take some notes at the end of the day. Ooh, felt super bloated today. And I ate pizza for breakfast or whatever. Not that pizza is a bad food, not trying to vilify it, but that's the only way we make these correlations for us.
Mm-hmm.
And I can help people do that. And you can help people do that too. But honestly, people can do that part just by themselves. Just start tapping in and being aware to how your body's feeling.
Yeah, I think this goes back to something I was saying earlier about the confusion that people have as far as questioning everything they're putting in their body. Is this right? Is this wrong? Is this going to help me? Should I log my food or calories, something that I do need to pay attention to? Or is it more just paying attention to my macros and my protein? Is it both of those things? So I'd love a little more clarity on a lot of our listeners. They are interested in getting more metabolically healthy, making sure that they can maybe lose some extra body fat if that's something that they have, and just feel as the best that they can as far as having more energy and minimizing their risk for having any kind of disease later in their life. So I'm curious, what are you advocating for? I know it's not a one size fits all, but can we touch on calories for a moment? Because there's a big debate with a lot of different practitioners as far as they matter. We do need to make sure that we're not over consuming. I think Lane Norton, what does he call it? A like energy toxicity is what Lane Norton, who's PhD in nutrition, calls it energy toxicity. Just another way of saying people are eating too many calories. I'm like, okay, we can rebrand that if we want to make that sound like a little bit more. I don't know if that sounds more or less scary to people, but I would love your thoughts on the calorie debate.
Yeah, it is nuanced and I understand why everyone's yelling at each other again. And I think again, both of them are right. Both sides are right. I do think the average American is consuming too many calories. I do also think that calories are a real thing. So if you're going to ask me, hey, I'm going to eat M&Ms, should I eat this 600 calorie bag of M&Ms or this 200 calorie bag of M&Ms? I'll probably say the 200 calorie bag depending on the person's goals, but almost everyone would be better served with that 200 calorie bag. So they are a unit of measure. And certainly in a lab when they use the bomb calorimeter and all this stuff, a calorie is a real thing. It's a unit of measure that is actually true. But in our bodies, the situation is a little bit more complex. So when I eat 100 calories of Twinkie, it is 100 calories in the test tube, but in my body, I get a whole different secretion of hormones. My insulin, my blood sugar surges first, so my insulin has to go higher. It affects my ghrelin and leptin levels, which are hunger hormones. It can even go downstream and impact some other hormones. And that makes it more likely for me to store that as fat, as opposed to if I eat 100 calories of broccoli, same 100 calories in the test tube. But in this way, I don't get that whole hormonal cascade that tells my body, store fat. Also, in the Twinkie case, those extra chemical stuff that my liver then has to process can clog up my detoxification system. Oops, sorry for the straw. Clog up my detoxification systems, cause problems with the way my organs are functioning, and eventually lead to metabolic unhealth as well. So, they're a thing, but it's just not as simple as let's all count our calories and that's the answer.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because a lot of people are saying that all of the metabolic dysfunction, or maybe a majority of it, is coming from this energy toxicity or overconsumption of calories. And it's sort of like, what's really important? Is it changing what we eat, or is it making sure we're not overeating? I personally think it's both. I don't think it's one or the other, just in my own experience of kind of experimenting with your body and seeing how you feel when you eat things. And if you can journal and start to pay attention, you can realize, wow, that made me feel hungry really quickly an hour later. Okay, but that same meal, same amount of calories, didn't make me feel hungry. So that just shows you right there, too, what foods are going to keep you feeling full a lot longer. And then there's also this whole debate of the best diet is the one that you're going to stick to. And that's an interesting one, because that could just say, what if for someone, the best diet they can stick to because they love it is eating pizza and ice cream every single day? So I just like to bring this up because these are a lot of things that you see health experts and influencers sharing with people, and
Yeah.
really parsing out data that shows people like it's okay to have 5 Diet Cokes in a day, right? Because
Yeah.
really, it's not going to be carcinogenic unless you have 1,000. Look at the data, right? And so then we have people who are more confused than ever before. And so
Yeah.
I just keep coming back to that because I think it's an important thing we can all just chat about today, because I feel like we're on a similar page with all of this.
Yeah, it sounds like it for sure. So first thing is the idea that you expressed that it's both, and I completely agree. Where I start with my clients is changing the quality of their food instead of the calorie count, because I think that one does both. If I just tell someone, okay, now today you're eating 3,000 calories, we have to go to 2,000 calories. That feels like restriction. It feels like the only answer is to log every single thing and weigh every single thing for the rest of their life. It feels like when I have to eat less, I'm hungrier. It just feels bad. But if I change the composition of their food, It is literally impossible. I used to know the exact number, but I'll get it directionally correct, and it doesn't matter because no one will try this anyway. I think the average human would have to eat something like 56 cups of broccoli in order to gain weight or something like that. And you just can't. Like, you will probably vomit or explode or something like that. So and I'm not suggesting, by the way, that anyone only goes on the broccoli diet. That is not the Megan Lyons diet. But when we're shifting towards more whole foods, we naturally regulate our calories more easily. I'm a hungry person. I have a robust appetite. And still, if I'm eating mostly whole foods, I don't have to count all of my calories or do any of this kind of stuff because I'm more regulated. Now, processed food, unfortunately, messes with our hunger signals, messes with our taste buds, makes us want more. And I'm not an angel. I eat processed food too, right? Like, I'm human, it's okay. But most of my diet is whole foods. Otherwise, because I'm that hungry person, I would probably eat double the calories if I were just eating ultra processed food that's engineered to make me want to eat more. So when we see these studies of the professor who lost weight on the Twinkie only diet or something like that, it's true. You can. He was being monitored and filmed for a documentary, so he knew how many Twinkies he could eat. But I bet if it were me and I could only eat Twinkies, I would probably eat more calories than I was supposed to because I'm just not getting the nutrients I need. So my body's giving me signals to eat more and more and more. And then what we don't measure is on the Twinkie only diet or the pizza only diet or whatever, we don't measure the health 5-10 years down the road.
Yeah.
And that's really scary.
Yep.
So I wouldn't recommend either of those, Twinkie only or pizza
And I think
only
we're
diet.
seeing that right now with the rise of these obesity drugs, all the GLP-1 drugs, right? We haven't measured the health of anyone in 5 years because this just came on the market and it's so new. And while we're seeing rapid weight loss and some comorbidities going away with people and positive effects, there's also two sides of this coin, which will be really interesting because without paired with exercise and like really retaining and gaining muscle, there's a lot that can happen when when your body's starving, basically. I liken it to a crash diet when you're taking something like that because you're just eating so little because you're not hungry that you're basically putting yourself in starvation where you may lose a lot of weight, but how much of that weight is fat and muscle? And if you're not, I was just listening to Dr. Mark Hyman talk about this yesterday on a podcast, and he was like, if you're not strength training 4 days per week while taking these drugs, which is a lot of strength training for someone who
Yeah.
maybe has never gone to the gym, and it's not so easy to just jump right in to a strength training routine, he's like, then this is a disaster.
Yeah.
And that's really scary.
It is really scary. I was very like absolute no, never for anyone when it first came out because I was so scared about that. I have changed my tone and said 99% no. I
Mm-hmm.
still think for the person who might have literally 200, 300
Yep.
pounds to lose, I still think there's probably a case for that the benefits outweigh the risk. And I can't prescribe this. So this is just my read of the research. But I think the way it's been used, the average person who's using it is trying to lose those last 10 pounds or
Yeah.
hasn't tried their diet and lifestyle with a real good old college try or hasn't worked with someone maybe who can guide them more quickly and or more efficiently. And some of those risks are really scary. Even on the website of Novo Nordisk, it says weight regain is expected when you stop taking the drug.
I
And
believe there's a black box warning on the drug,
for
which is
thyroid
also for
cancer.
the FDA to put a black box warning on something. There's
It's a big
definitely,
deal.
you should look into that a little bit. Now, I know that people, again, experts will be like, well, the thyroid cancer was shown in rats. It's rare.
Yep.
They gave them X amount of it, more than the person is going to get in. I know it's not the same with rats and people, but still,
Yes.
to put a black box warning on something, black box warning was put on OxyContin.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah. I agree. And so, again, do I think that everyone who tries Ozempic will get thyroid cancer? No, I don't, based on the rat study. But would that be enough for me to be like, oh, absolutely no, not going in my body? Yes. And then if I were the person who had 300 pounds to lose, would I think, okay, maybe the risk is worth it? I
Sure.
don't know. So
Sure.
I can't say yes or no for everyone. But again, I think for people who haven't exhausted every single other possibility, I personally would be very cautious and scared about it.
Well, let's talk about the people who want to lose that 10, 15 pounds, who you're sharing, maybe they didn't give it a good old try. And I know for certain, since you've worked with so many clients, that you see the people who have tried
Yes.
everything. They have gone on
Yeah.
Whole30. They have done keto for a month or two. They've done intermittent fasting. They have just gone low carb. They've
Yes.
tried maybe just a carnivore diet. Well, all the things, right? To see, again, which one can I stick to that's going to give me results. And what happens is, okay, they can have this short term weight loss occur. And
Yep.
then they want to go out to dinner with their friends and, fuck it. I want to enjoy myself. I'm ordering drinks. I'm eating chips and guac right now. So
Yes.
this is a real struggle for people. And they want their confidence. They want to be able to stick to something. And they, in my experience, feel almost broken and really
Yes.
so defeated by continuing to just keep trying. And then they just don't even want to try anymore. And so once they get to you or me, it's sometimes very difficult, I find, to work with someone because it's like this is long-term lifestyle. Like you're saying, we're not
Yeah.
even it's I don't need you to count calories necessarily. I want to work on quality of food and balancing your plate and learning about food, the educational piece. So I would just love to hear your thoughts on if people are listening going, yeah, that sounds exactly like me. How the hell do I get out of this and finally get to my healthy weight and feel confident?
Yeah, it is so hard. And I do have the utmost empathy because I know, like you said, the vast majority, I was going to put a percentage, but I don't know, but the vast majority of people who come to me have genuinely tried everything that's in their mental toolkit. And so I don't ask them to rate every single session I have with them. I see clients in packages of 7 sessions, but I could almost guarantee the first session is when they're least happy because the very first session is so underwhelming to them.
Mhm.
I am talking to them about like, let's include a vegetable with lunch or like, let's take 10 deep breaths before your snack or something. And they're like, no, I want the plan. I
Yeah.
want to know what I can't have. I want the rules because that's what they've been used to.
Yep.
And I get to, and it sounds like you too, I get to talk to them about how they could do that. If I gave them a really strict meal plan, I know they could do it. I trust they could do that, but I promise them that's not the answer for the rest of their life.
Yep.
And what we're doing is working on the answer for the rest of your life.
Yep.
And so if you love, like I love chocolate, if someone told me I couldn't eat chocolate for the rest of my life, well, if it were an allergy or something, I could live a very happy life without chocolate. But if it was just about restriction, I'd be like, no, I
Yeah.
could do
Oh,
that for a week.
Mackie knows we would be not together anymore if he told me
Yeah,
I had 3 squares after lunch today.
I love it. Amazing. So something like that, we find what's important to us and we work it in. And that is underwhelming to people who want the list and the strict and the do's and don'ts and all this stuff. But I promise you, if it works, which it does, that will feel so much more rewarding in the end than I white knuckled my way for 30 days and I lost 10 pounds and now, I can't handle it anymore. So I'm back to normal. That's
What about
miserable.
for those where it doesn't work? There's cases, right? This doesn't work. Where
Yeah.
people are their calories are within the range that should help them lose weight. They're eating balanced nutrition. Their protein is where it needs to be. And they are just not seeing any movement at all. Where do you
Yeah.
go in those cases with people? What are your first, all right, maybe we go this route now?
Yeah. So it will depend on the person. I do a lot of people come into my office and they want all the tests. They've heard me talk about the stool test for one person and the hormone test for another person and this test and this test, and they just want it all. And I
Mhm.
almost never do all the tests at the beginning because most people don't need all the tests.
Yeah.
But if we genuinely have tried what I think would be a more metabolically healthy diet, which we haven't touched yet on increasing protein. Most of my clients really need to increase their protein and all of that. But if we've tried all that, then I would say I would go based on their symptoms and see if it's a gut issue first. I really do like a stool test that I run to see exactly what's going on with our microbiome, which regulates our metabolism. A hormone test second. And I say second, not in order of priority, but based on the person's symptoms. So I'm asking them, how's your digestion, obviously, or how are your menstrual cycles, or what time of month is this the worst, or what other symptoms are you experiencing?
Yeah.
And I might go deep on hormones then. And that includes metabolic hormones. Leptin resistance is a really common one, or insulin resistance, something like that. And then finally, there are a suite of other tests that I could run, but maybe I should have put this before. What I'll try to do is change, like, okay, you've been walking, which I think is one of the best exercises. Let's shift to strength training. Or you've been strength training, let's switch to the Peloton for a week. Just change something if we've already tried the nutrition and the labs aren't giving us clues.
Yeah, that's good. And again, it's just trial and error and that experimentation, which people have to be on board. This is a process. This is
Yeah.
not a quick fix for sure. So
Yeah.
I'm curious on touching on some insulin resistance here. For clients that you see with insulin resistance, are we going low carb? Are we continuing to do a very normal to moderate amount of carbs, but protein is high? Where are you as far as that goes? Because I know that, as we shared, if 60% of people are going to come back with their labs showing pre-diabetic or diabetic, that means we've got insulin resistance. So does that affect how we are eating breakfast, lunch, dinner, the carbohydrates that we can have?
Yeah, it depends on the starting place because, quote, low carb means a different thing to lots of different
For
people.
sure.
And generally, I find people to be eating more of the refined and sugary carbohydrates than they think they are. So they think, oh, yeah, like, no, I don't have a cupcake after every meal or something like that. But then when we start looking into it, there are more sources of breads or pastas or muffins or just a handful of candy or sweetener in your coffee or whatever. And in a period of healing insulin resistance, I will pull back on those. I almost never, I think I can say never, go as low carb as, like, you can't have vegetables or you can't
Yeah.
have blueberries or something like that. But it is common for me to say, if someone's healing from insulin resistance, let's pull back on the breads and the pastas and even maybe the tropical fruits, something like that. So that is, quote, low carb to some people, but
And
is
the
very
grains
important.
as well, like rice, quinoa, potato, or like not grain, but potato, even those foods as well while you're healing that.
So that will depend on the stress level of the person. If the client is a stressed female in reproductive years, I think it's dangerous to go too low carb for too long for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Our stress hormones are really powerful. And when we're riding on adrenaline and cortisol, we can really mess with our other hormones, our sex hormones, if we go too low carb. So for my stressed females, I'm not going to take out those grains and potatoes and things like that. We might work on portion sizes. Some people, when they eat rice, it's like a giant bowl of rice with 1 ounce of chicken, and that's probably not serving anyone with insulin resistance, but not pulling them out altogether. I do find that men in general, and there are still exceptions, but men with insulin resistance, especially those who manage their stress well, we can pull out those grains and those potatoes for a period of time without detriment. And maybe their healing is even quicker in terms of insulin resistance. So I think it depends.
Yeah, I think, it depends. Somebody
Yeah.
asked me, what's something you say most to clients? And I'm like, it depends. I'm
Yeah.
like,
That's typically my clue as to whether somebody's an expert or not. If they have this hard line response to everybody needs to do this, then
Yeah.
they might be they're more questionable than somebody that says, oh, it depends.
well, there's
And
so
That's,
many factors, right? Everybody's health is different. Like, somebody might
yeah.
be dealing with very mild insulin resistance. Somebody might be
Right.
dealing with really excessive insulin resistance. Someone might have PCOS versus someone might have a thyroid condition, or depending on what you're training for is really different too, right? If you have a marathon client, that's going to require different needs than if somebody is just leisurely, maybe doing the Peloton 30 minutes a few times per week. That's
Right.
they're all such different scenarios. So it's really hard to just say this is the thing that you need to do. And this is where I think just giving ourselves agency as human beings to ask the questions, to learn about our bodies, and we need to be primed with the right tools is really important.
Yes, I agree.
And we have so much free and amazing information out there, but it's hard to suss through it and to know, especially we're talking about there's all these conflicting ideas happening out there. Yeah.
Amazing.
So just going back, we touched on a lot of things. We touched on calories, and I feel hopefully that the listeners are confident in understanding that it really isn't just calories in, calories out. There's a lot of nuances when it comes to this, and food quality and blood sugar stabilization is really important for our health. And you mentioned protein. Can we talk a little bit about protein? Because that is also a very hot topic in the wellness world right now, more so than it's ever been before, which is exciting to me coming from us from a strength and conditioning background, because we know the
Yeah.
importance of protein. If you actually want to build muscle, you have to eat protein. It's just how it works. So I'd love to hear
Yep.
your thoughts on protein, the protein conversation that's been going on right now.
Well, I agree with you. If you want to build muscle, you just have to eat protein. That's how it works. That was a quotable. And I think, thank goodness, more and more people are realizing the importance of building muscle, not just because body standards are changing and what we look at in people is changing, but also we're realizing sarcopenia is a real issue as people age. And once you are 75 years old, it's not impossible to build muscle, but it's a whole lot harder to build muscle then than it would be in our 30s, 40s, even 50s. So I think this conversation is so important. I think protein is, I don't choose favorites in macronutrients, and I could make an argument for why all of them are my favorite, but it is such a gift of a macronutrient because it's really hard to overconsume. Just like the broccoli example, like people don't sit there and eat 8 raw chicken breasts, or oh no, not even raw. I'm not recommending that. 8 boiled chicken breasts.
My cat might eat
Yeah.
that many.
Oh, maybe
I
your
think they
cat.
like raw
Okay.
chicken. Yeah. She's never had it, but I'm assuming she might like it.
My dogs would probably eat raw chicken too because they will eat absolutely anything. So
Yeah.
I'm with you. But humans, no, that's not dietary advice. No one would eat 8 boiled chicken breasts. Protein is really good for appetite control, really good for satiety, really good for blood sugar regulation. I don't think that we all need to be guzzling 7 protein shakes per day. We can do it by a lot of whole food, and I'm not opposed to protein supplements as well, but some people are taking it too far. I heard someone say research that now we need 100 grams at each meal, and I'm like, no, most people do not need 100 grams of protein at each meal, but most people are getting too little for sure.
Well, if it's 100 grams per meal, let's just say somebody saw that and they were like, okay, that's going to get me to my goal further. But then they were like, why am I gaining weight? Well, that's also a lot of calories and protein. Everything has
Yes.
calories to it, as we were talking about. So this
Yes.
balancing your plate idea, I think, is so powerful. And I know that, again, there's not a one size fits all plate. I'll just share what has worked for myself over the years. And again, this is just me. And I have gone through the gamut of trying all the things over the years because I'm really a kinesthetic learner. So I've just tried different things to see how they feel. And when I went to school and studied nutrition, you're so interested in all the different dietary theories that are out there, from the zone diet to blood, the
Blood type
blood
diet.
type
Yeah.
diet, just all different things, just like really interested in reading about them and trying things. And I've landed on just whole foods. Doesn't mean I don't have processed foods in my life, like you're saying, because it's hard to completely eliminate those. Making sure that I'm getting enough protein each major meal, like focusing my meal around my protein source, and then having some starchy carbohydrate that gives me pleasure. Like today it was quinoa and black beans. Yesterday it was sweet potatoes, and then vegetables, right? Today was broccoli, and I had there was like broccolis and cashews,
She had
right?
8 cups of broccoli.
I was so full after having that one big cup of broccoli. So that meal was and it's like protein, carb, fat, right? 1, 2, 3 punch. And I feel energized. My blood sugar feels stable. And then if I just eat carbs the other day, I'm training right now for an ultra marathon, which my coach is like, you
Wow.
need to eat a lot of carbs, right? To fuel
Yeah.
these runs. Like I have a
Yeah.
3-hour run on Sunday. So it's
Wow.
a lot. But I noticed in this shift, because this is new for me, and this is again when we kind of experiment with our body, I was like, all right, I need more carbs. So I had a bowl of cereal and banana, just cereal with banana. 1 hour
Yeah.
later, I was like, I feel like my blood sugar is tanking, which is just a really
Yes.
interesting thing because I'm not used to that.
Yes. And it's such a great observation. One time is not a problem. Yeah, you felt icky for an hour or two, but that's not the problem for our body. Your awareness of that and your connection, oh, it was the cereal and banana. Great. Next time you can add some chia seeds or add a scoop of protein powder or have a few hard boiled eggs before or
Yep.
whatever. Now that's so cool.
Yeah,
And
and
it's
it's
super
not
cool
like
that
that
you're
for
training.
everyone. Oh, thank you. It's not like that for everyone who's a marathoner. A lot of people do great on just eating all of these carbs and they don't. But I don't know if maybe my body's gotten so used to it over the years.
Yeah.
But just going from not having that protein source or any fat in there was shocking to me. I was like, wow, made me feel like garbage. Next time, like you're saying, I'm putting in that tablespoon of peanut butter or whatever, I need to slow down how quickly my body absorbed all those carbs. So,
Yes.
but I know we don't have all the time in the world, and I would just quickly love for you to share on, as we're talking about blood sugar, brain health, and cognitive decline, because this is going back to just aging well. We talked about sarcopenia and how if we want to ensure aging a little bit more gracefully, having more muscle on our body is really powerful. So how about when it comes to our brain health and cognitive decline and how important it is that we pay attention to our food?
So important. Alzheimer's is being called type 3 diabetes right now because of the connection between blood sugar dysregulation and brain health. It is so intertwined. I believe that in not long, maybe 10 years, the leading researchers will come out and say the main cause of this was blood sugar dysregulation earlier in life. And it is one of those things, cognitive decline, Alzheimer's, and other types of it, that creeps up over time. People think, boom, one day it just strikes us, and it doesn't. The symptoms of cognitive decline show up, or the beginnings biologically of cognitive decline show up 20 years on average before the diagnosis. So it's something that we can be doing something about now. And I think of brain health as it relates to nutrition, number one, as making sure we're getting enough micronutrients. So we've talked about the macronutrients. Those are important for so many reasons. For our brain in particular, we need all those good micronutrients, the vitamins and the minerals. And this comes from eating the rainbow. It comes from eating a whole lot of whole foods, not just vegetables and fruits, although in the research, those tend to be, we see like leafy greens, blueberries, walnuts, chocolate, thank goodness for brain health, avocados, fatty fish, chia seeds, all of these kinds of rich, robust whole foods that have many micronutrients. So we need plenty of those. And then we do want to work on our blood sugar because of that connection. And then also all of the toxicities. So like you said, the word toxicity has been thrown around and is like a fear tactic or fear mongering right now. We live in a toxic world. We cannot eliminate all toxins. I'm certainly not trying to, but seeing what we can start to minimize, that can interfere with our neuronal firing, literally the way that our brain conducts messages. And over time, that can lead to some scary stuff. So those are the three big categories I would think about for brain health. Oh, and sleep too.
Yeah.
Any environmental toxin that you think is super easy that that you see with clients, you're like, guess what? You could get rid of this one now and you don't even realize it. Is there anyone that you can recommend to the listeners?
Oh, that's so great. I wish I had a great answer. I think no, because what comes to mind is plastic, but it's not easy.
Yeah.
I'm very aware of that. And there's still plastic in my house. We can't be perfect on this. I don't know. Do you have an easy one?
I think products is one. that's a little like easy just to look at, like soaps and makeups
Yeah.
and all of the things like that that might, if you're using them a lot, especially those who use lotions every day or makeup every
Yeah.
single day that's going right into your skin. I think that's a good one to just look at. And there's tons of companies now that are making more natural products, which is great. So, or
Yeah.
just
That's
be
a
like
great
me and
point.
give up altogether and just barely shower, don't put makeup on anymore. I feel like I gave up on myself a while ago.
I love it.
And then
It's
I
so good
convinced
for your
myself, I'm like,
skin.
I'm doing great, no toxins, but it's just, I'm just smelly and lazy over here.
No, I am sure you're not smelly, and I am confident you're not lazy. I had someone on my podcast talking about skin sobering, Dr. Erin Chom, and that's her whole point is stop using everything. So you're ahead of the game.
Great. Well, it's not because of that reason though. You have the 8-minute morning routine that will change your life in, I know we have an hour. Do you have a minute to share that with people? The 8-minute routine that will change your life. This is a big, exciting
Absolutely.
one.
Yes, morning routines are some of my favorite topics. So I, as I do, studied all the morning routines of all the quote successful people, and I came up with these 8 habits. I organized them into an acronym just so I could remember them. And the acronym is wake up and go. Technically wake up, go, but wake up and go sounds better. So W is for water, big glass of water first thing. A is for affirmations. Just say something nice to yourself, pump yourself up. K is for knowledge, read a page of a book. E is for exercise. Even if you'll exercise later, just stretch, get your blood flowing in the morning for a minute. U is unwind, 1 minute of deep breathing. P, positivity, read a quote, listen to a song, something like that. G is for gratitude, and O is for one goal, set one goal for the day. So if we do each of those, wake up, go for 1 minute each, you will feel, I promise you, I've promised a lot of people and no one's told me I was wrong. You will feel so much better heading into the day.
I'm going to give that a try. Love it.
He totally
Yes, I
will.
can't wait.
And then I'll force
Amazing.
you to do it, make me do it too. Because
Yes,
waking up and looking at your
teamwork.
phone is not
Not good.
what we want to be doing.
Not ideal.
I
Yes, I
absolutely love this
agree.
conversation so much. And what you're doing is really phenomenal with people. And where can listeners find you? How can they work with you?
Everything is on the lionsshare.org. Lions is Lyons. You can find social media, podcast. I've been blogging since 2013, so there's lots of free stuff on there, and also how to work with my team and I.
I love it. Well, thank you for coming onto the Longevity Lab. We really appreciate it.
Thank you both so much.
Thank you.